Welcome. So great to see you here. I'm Dr. Jeanette, a physician. I teach how simple lifestyle changes like the food we eat may prevent Alzheimer's dementia and also contribute to a life of health and longevity. Today we are making another healthy recipe for you to try and enjoy. So let's get cooking. Our recipe today is Mexican street corn soup. We are going to start by sauteing up some onions in our cast iron skillet here on this induction burner. Mexican street corn is delicious. I love it, but it isn't exactly healthy. By the time you add the sour cream or the butter and the cheese, it's loaded with deliciousness, but also with some things that aren't so great for your brain or your body. So I've decided that it would be great to take the tastes of the Mexican street corn and create a soup. Besides that, it's a lot easier than roasting all those and then adding If you want to make Mexican street corn, I would put it in that category of once in a while, enjoy it. But if you want a healthier version with all the deliciousness and the taste of Mexican street corn, this might be a great option for you. So I'm sauteing up a medium onion that I diced. I'm going to saute it a couple of minutes until it's just start to get to be translucent. You can see here it's starting to brown just a little bit now. And I'm going to go ahead and add our garlic. I sauteed the onions up in probably about a tablespoon of olive oil. I use roasted garlic in pretty much everywhere a recipe calls for garlic. A lot of people don't have roasted garlic. So instead of the roasted garlic, you can just use regular garlic and dice it up, mince it up real fine, and saute it up. And I'm going to add some of the spices as well here. What I'm adding is some smoked paprika. Love the smokiness, and you know, it kind of gives the soup that same smoky flavor that you get from the Mexican street corn. Probably added about a teaspoon of that, about a teaspoon and a half of chili powder. Give it a little bit of a bite, a little bit of a zing, and about a teaspoon of cumin. I'm going to saute those all up here. And if it starts to stick to the bottom of your pan, you can add a little bit more olive oil. Olive oil is so good for you. It's one of those healthy fats that it has omega-3 fatty acids in it, and it's one of those healthy fats that your brain needs. Your brain actually needs a lot of fat in order to function and to work properly. So olive oil provides one of those healthy fats for your brain. I'm going to turn that down just a little bit. And before I started this recipe, I had 4 cups of corn on the cob that I cooked, and then I cut the corn off of the cob and kind of roasted it up in my frying pan before I started the recipe. So before you start, go ahead and get your corn roasted up so that when you get to this point, you'll be able to add it to your recipe. In addition to that, I'm adding 4 cups of my homemade vegetable broth. You can see it looks much cloudier than your store-purchased vegetable broth. That's because it's still got a fair amount of the vegetable fibers in it. As when I boil it down, all the vegetables down, what I do is I save all of my kitchen scraps. The carrots, the onions, celery, cauliflower. Love cauliflower in my vegetable broth. And those are actually the main ones I save. And I save this skins because I grow them. The skins are clean. They don't have any pesticides or herbicides on them. And so I can take the skins off and save the skins and cook those in my vegetable broth to create my vegetable broth for soups, stews, or anything, gravies, anything I want to use my vegetable broth for. It's a really healthy way to make sure that your vegetable broth is good for you. The other thing is that it gives you such a nice, rich, hearty vegetable broth that most people are surprised that this is actually just vegetable broth because it's got such a rich, hearty taste to it. I'm going to actually add probably a little salt and pepper to this. We added the chili pepper, which was making me cough earlier, and I don't use a lot of salt, so I'm not going to add a lot of salt here, but I'm adding some salt. We're going to just let this cook about 10 minutes. While it's cooking, I'm going to pull up a chair because I have a story I want to tell you about how, as a kid growing up, we connected with family and friends every summer over corn. Corn was our connection. Let's talk about how we connected over corn. When I was a kid growing up, we of course had this huge organic garden. There were 10 of us and we grew most of the food that we ate. One of the things that we grew was corn on the cob. And back then, the corn that we grew was not genetically modified. And of course, because it was organic, it didn't have any of the herbicides and pesticides on it. So at probably about August, end of July, August timeframe, when the corn was ripe and ready to eat, we would invite family, friends, and neighbors for a big corn and potato roast. And we would pick a bunch of ears of corn and take the husks out of them, wrap them in some foil, and then also the same thing with the potatoes. We would dig a bunch of potatoes and put a little olive oil on them and wrap them in foil as well. We would then, my dad, in the middle of the cow pasture. Now you might be wondering, why would you do a corn roast in the middle of the cow pasture? Well, for a couple of reasons. One was the creek went through the middle of the cow pasture. So if the fire for the corn roast got a little bit too vigorous, we would have a ready water source that we could put on the fire. The other thing was the middle of the cow pasture. We didn't have really anything that was going to burn because all we had was grass and, of course, the cow pies. Cow pies will actually burn, but that's a whole nother story. And the buildings on our farm were far enough away that they weren't going to burn. So my dad would dig a big trench and we would build a big bonfire in the trench. Once that bonfire died down, we had a beautiful bed of coals in the bottom of the trench. And what we would do is we would rake, or my dad would usually, rake the coals, about half of them aside. We would then lay all of the corn and the potatoes right on those coals. My dad would then rake the coals back on top of them, and I can't remember if he put a layer of wet. I think that that's what he did. He would take burlap sacks that were soaked in water, and he would lay them on top of the coals, and that would create steam within that trench. And the steam and the coals and the heat and everything would cook the corn and the potatoes. Actually, it seems like, if I think about it now, he would put the potatoes in first because they always took longer to cook, and then he would add the corn later. But either way, it was a delicious feast for us. And we would, you know, it was something we all looked forward to at the end of the summer. Our friends would come, family, and everybody, you know, we'd gather around, we'd haul our chairs out to the cow pasture, sit around the fire, and then, of course, us kids' favorite part of it was after we got done eating, we'd set up tables, and after we got done eating the corn and the potatoes, we would break out the marshmallows and the graham crackers, and a few chocolate bars. We rarely got desserts or sugar, but on rare occasion we did have desserts and we did have sugar. And this was one of those occasions where we would each get a square of chocolate to put on our s'more. And it was always a competition to see who could roast the absolute perfect marshmallow and not burn the marshmallows. It was considered not good s'more form if you burnt your marshmallow. So our soup here is cooking along quite nicely, and it's almost done. While it finishes cooking, let's talk about why corn is so good for you. Corn, I think, sometimes gets a little bit of a bad rep. Number one, because it's a carbohydrate. And a lot of times it's made into high fructose corn syrup, which is bad for you, no question about it. High fructose corn syrup is not a good thing for you. But corn itself has a really interesting antioxidant. It's called quercetin. Quercetin is one of those antioxidants that is a flavonoid that also has some pretty potent anti-inflammatory properties. So corn will actually have protective effects for your brain. It will help destroy the free radicals. And of course, free radicals also will activate those inflammatory pathways in your brain and your body. But it also acts as an anti-inflammatory and will tampen down those cytokines, those chemicals that will ramp up your inflammatory process within your brain. So corn is good for you. Corn is good for you for another reason. The other reason that corn is good for you, I remember when we went to China, the tour guide that was in charge of our group, we were walking through the streets of Beijing, and she stopped at a street vendor and purchased an ear of corn. And I asked her, I said, is that field corn? Because there's a difference. There's corn that you can't grow for the cows, or cow corn that we used to call it, or sweet corn. And she kind of looked at me strange and wasn't sure at what I was asking. So I said, well, in the US, we have two types of corn. One type of corn that we give to the livestock, and the other type of corn is what we eat ourselves. It's sweet, it's tender, and it's delicious. Oh, and she looked at me, she said, oh no, she said, this corn is for our health and longevity. She said, this corn is for digestion. She said, it's loaded with fiber. She says it doesn't taste good at all, but we eat it because it's good for us and it helps with our digestion. Well, the corn we eat today, even the sweet corn, is also loaded with very much of the same fiber, maybe not quite as much, and it is a great prebiotic for the bacteria in our gut, which are the probiotic. We're going to be adding some yogurt as a condiment on the top of the soup at the end, or, you know, as a condiment on the top to kind of dress up the soup. And yogurt is a great probiotic. So when you've got the yogurt as a probiotic and you've got the corn as a prebiotic, you've got some really good nutrition for your gut. And if you keep your gut happy, it will really make a difference in keeping you happy and your body healthy. So I think we're about ready here to finish up our soup. I'm going to open up a can of coconut milk that I have over here. Normally, a lot of times people would add, instead of the coconut milk, would add heavy cream. But we're making this soup vegan today, so I'm adding coconut milk. And coconut milk also is another one of those things that's great for your brain, especially. So coconut milk has what's called MCTs, medium chain triglycerides. MCTs are an alternate fuel source for your brain. Your brain can't use a lot of types of fuel sources. Its primary source, and pretty much its only source, is glucose. And if it runs out of glucose, because glucose can cross that blood-brain barrier, if it runs out of glucose, your brain is kind of in trouble. It isn't going to work so well. So coconut milk, well, the MCTs, medium chain triglycerides, in coconut milk will actually break down and be converted to ketones. Ketones are an alternate source of energy for your brain. So it can use ketones in addition to the glucose if it runs out of energy. So MCTs are a great source of ketones in your brain. I'm just adding here about a cup of, I like to take the cream off of the top of the coconut milk and make sure I get all that good, delicious cream. And that's probably close to a cup there. I'm gonna stir that all up. It's looking really good. Smelling really good too. It's too bad you can't smell it. Well, you'll have to make it and then you'll be able to smell it. Next, what I want to do is I'm going to blend up about half of the corn in this soup. You could blend it up in a blender, or if you have a regular traditional blender, or if you have an immersion blender, you can blend it right in your soup kettle. And I'm going to blend it with an immersion blender. So I got my immersion, I'm going to just take this out. And I've got my immersion blender over here, and I'm going to turn the temperature down. In fact, I think I'm going to just, turn it down on real low here. So it isn't boiling real vigorously. And we're going to just blend it up. About half the corn is all blended up. We want a nice, fairly creamy soup here. Be careful when you blend with the immersion blender. This isn't real deep, so you want to be careful. It's hot. You don't want to be careful about splatters. You don't want to get burned, especially when you're using a regular blender. Just be real careful with the splatters. I think we got about half of that blended up now, and we'll be ready to add some to a bowl. And looks like I got wearing some of it on my apron as well. Guess that's why you wear an apron when you're cooking. That's the function of an apron. And add it to our bowl, and we're going to add some nice garnish to it. Maybe a little yogurt, probiotic yogurt, some lime. In fact, I want to add some lime juice to this here. And little splash of lime, actually a big splash of lime. And I'm going to just bring it back to another boil real quick, and it will be ready to serve. Our delicious Mexican street corn soup is all done, and oh, I gotta tell you, it smells just like Mexican street corn soup. Of course, no surprise. Let's dish it up, and I'm looking at all of these amazing garnishes for it. I'm not sure, but I think I'll probably end up putting all of them on it. I can't wait to give this soup a try. Even though it's vegan, Farmer Fred might even give it a try. We'll see. He's not a big fan of vegan. What are we going to garnish it with? Definitely some cheese, because I'm not vegan either. So I enjoy dairy. I'm mostly vegetarian though. I like a plant-based Mediterranean type diet. Put some cheese on there. Need a little corn with our cheese. All it is corn soup, so we got add a little extra corn here. And let's see, a little bit of cilantro. Cilantro is one of those interesting herbs. I found that people either love it or leave it. They're either, like, I'm one of the love-it's in the love it camp for when it comes to cilantro. I love it in all kinds of things, not just Mexican food, but all kinds of things. But some people aren't fans and they just like to leave it. Let's see, what else? Oh, we definitely need a couple of slices of these jalapenos here. Maybe a little slice of lime next to that. And some nice color. Let me actually put this is one of my favorite yogurts. This is actually just plain Greek yogurt. And what I do is I take it and I put it in a strainer and let it drain for several hours before I use it. And it ends up being a nice, thick, creamy consistency, kind of almost the consistency of a whipped, maybe cream cheese. And lastly, we need a little extra color here with some sprinkles of, I've got some tortilla chips as well as some roasted corn nuts. So there we have it, a delicious bowl of Mexican street corn soup. Thank you for connecting with me today. And thank you for joining me to learn more about my pillars for health and longevity. Today, we actually covered 3 of the pillars. The pillar for connection. We connected over this delicious bowl of Mexican street corn soup by making it together. And we also discovered some delicious nutrition facts for our brain and our body, as well as lifelong learning, which is we learned how Mexican street corn soup, as well as so many other things, can be incorporated in our diet, simple lifestyle changes that will help you prevent cognitive decline, Alzheimer's, dementia, and give you a long and healthy health span. When you go to my website, you'll be able to find this recipe plus so many more healthy recipes for you to enjoy and explore. Also, don't forget to click on that health button and explore my 6 pillars in addition to the connection, the learning, as well as the nutrition. There's sleep. Make sure you get your sleep. Exercise, take a walk or do something, get outside in nature. Exercise every day, and of course, mindfulness. Pay attention to your wonderful world and your family, your connections, as well as all the great things that can come your way. Thank you for watching and for clicking that like button as well as subscribing. Don't forget to also sign up for notifications. All of these really help my channel
channel analytics. They help me grow this channel so that I can continue to bring you all of this great content and share with you all of the things that will help me share with you all of the changes that you can put in your life so that you have a long, healthy lifespan. And we'll see you next time on the Dr. Jonette channel.